My grandpa was a quiet man. He didn't talk much. But when I was little, I loved to visit him. His house smelled like old books and pipe tobacco. It was comforting.
Grandpa had a big leather chair. I would climb up and sit next to him. He would tell me stories about his childhood. Sometimes he would talk about the farm where he grew up. Other times, he would talk about his dog, Scout.
I loved his stories. He told them slowly. He spoke softly, his voice deep and reassuring. I felt safe and loved when I was with him. But Grandpa never talked about the war. He had a picture of himself in uniform. He looked so young and serious. I wanted to ask him about it, but something always stopped me. When I got older, my visits changed. Grandpa got sick. He had cancer. It made him weak. He didn't smile as much.
One day I went to see him. He was sitting in his chair by the window. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the room. He looked frail and tired. I sat next to him. We didn't say anything for a while. We just listened to the ticking of the old clock on the wall. It was the same clock that had been in his family for generations.
Finally he spoke. "David," he said, his voice raspy and weak. "I want to tell you something." His eyes, usually bright and twinkling, were clouded with a deep sadness. I knew then that he was going to talk about the war.
Grandpa started talking about his experiences in the war. He spoke about the friends he lost. He spoke about the horrors he witnessed. His voice trembled at times, the memories still painful.
Every day, I would sit and listen. He told me things he had never told anyone else. I learned about the man behind the uniform in the picture. I saw his pain. I felt his sorrow.
One day he gave me an old leather-bound book. It was his diary from the war. The pages were filled with his neat handwriting.
"This is for you," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Read it. It will tell you everything."
Grandpa died a few weeks later. I missed him terribly. His absence left a void in my life that no one else could fill. I kept my promise. I started reading his diary. His words painted vivid pictures in my mind.
I read about the mud and the trenches. I read about the fear and the uncertainty. I read about the camaraderie and the courage.
His words transported me to the battlefield. I felt like I was right there with him, experiencing the war firsthand. A different kind of courage. Grandpa wrote about his friends. Tommy, a farm boy from Iowa who dreamed of being a veterinarian. Michael, a quiet artist from New York who always carried a sketchbook. And John, a jokester from Chicago who could lift everyone's spirits. He wrote about their bravery. He wrote about their sacrifices. He wrote about their deaths. His words revealed a different kind of courage. It wasn't just about facing the enemy. It was about facing your fears. It was about doing your duty even when it was hard. His diary wasn't just about battles and bombs. It was about friendship and love, loss and grief. It was about the human cost of war.
Grandpa's diary, it wasn't just a record of battles. It was a testament to the bonds they shared, the love they had, and the grief they endured. It was about the human cost of war.
Secrets and lies. As I delved deeper into the diary, I found something unsettling. Grandpa had written about a mission, a dangerous mission behind enemy lines. His unit was supposed to gather intel, but something went wrong. They were ambushed, many died. Grandpa survived. But his words hinted at a cover-up. The official report didn't match his account. He mentioned betrayal. He mentioned a name, Lieutenant Evans. Who was Lieutenant Evans? And what really happened on that mission? The questions haunted me. I felt a growing need to uncover the truth.
My grandfather, the man I thought I knew, was a stranger. He carried secrets, dark secrets that he had kept hidden for years.
The more I read, the more I realized that the man I admired had lived through unimaginable horrors and had carried the weight of those secrets all his life.
Tucked between the pages of the diary, I found a letter. It was addressed to my grandmother. The date on the letter was just a few weeks before Grandpa was supposed to return home from the war. In the letter, he poured out his heart. He wrote about the horrors he had witnessed. He wrote about the guilt he felt for surviving when so many of his friends didn't. He confessed that he didn't know if he could ever be the same man again. He didn't know if he deserved her love after what he had been through. The letter was filled with raw emotion, a stark contrast to the stoic silence he had maintained all those years. It showed a side of him I had never known. I continued reading. The truth unfolded slowly, painfully. Lieutenant Evans had been captured. He gave information to the enemy in exchange for his life. That information led to the ambush. Grandpa and a few others survived, but they were sworn to secrecy. The army didn't want to admit to Evans's betrayal. They didn't want to create panic. Grandpa carried this burden for years. The weight of it crushed him. He couldn't talk about it. Not to Grandma, not to anyone. His silence wasn't just about protecting his country. It was about protecting himself. He was afraid of the truth. He was afraid of what it would do to him, to his family. Grandpa's diary and the letter changed everything. They gave me a new perspective on his life, on his silence. I understood why he was so quiet. He wasn't just being stoic. He was carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders. He was a hero, not just because of what he did in the war, but because of what he endured afterward. He bore his scars, both visible and invisible, with quiet dignity. His story wasn't just about war, it was about life, about the choices we make and the consequences we face. It was about love, loss, and the enduring power of the human spirit. I keep Grandpa's diary on my bookshelf. It's a reminder of the man he was, the sacrifices he made, and the secrets he kept. His story taught me the importance of listening. Sometimes, the most profound stories are told in whispers. It taught me the meaning of courage. True courage isn't about the absence of fear, but about the will to overcome it. Most importantly, his story taught me the power of forgiveness. We all make mistakes. We all carry scars. But it's through forgiveness, both of ourselves and others, that we find peace. Grandpa may be gone, but his legacy lives on, etched in the pages of his diary and forever imprinted on my heart.